I've got a wagon. Need someone to cook, mend clothes. There's food, shelter.
I cook good.
The last shepherd who worked this territory put a rifle barrel in his mouth on Christmas morning. They found him 3 days later, frozen solid in his sheep wagon, the back of his skull painted across the canvas ceiling. The trading post owner mentioned it to Caleb like discussing whether loneliness got him. Gets a lot of them. You be careful now. That was 6 years ago. Caleb had kept the same wagon. Some nights, when the darkness pressed close and the dead men whispered louder than usual, he understood exactly why that shepherd had done it. The miracle wasn't that men broke out here, it was that any of them lasted long enough to break. 7 years without a full night's sleep. Caleb Harding sat bolt upright in the blackness hand, already white-knuckled around the Winchester before his eyes opened. His heart slammed against his ribs like something trying to escape. Sweat soaked through his wool undershirt despite October cold seeping through canvas walls. Just wind. Only wind rattling the stovepipe. But for 3 terrible seconds, he'd been back at Antietam Creek, watching Sergeant Thomas Brennan's intestines spill onto blood-soaked grass. Artillery shells screaming overhead like demons escaping hell. The wet, meaty sound of a body hitting the ground beside him. A wet nose pressed against his trembling hand. Sergeant the dog, not the dead man whose name he carried, had crawled from beneath the bunk. Amber eyes caught faint ember glow from the Queen Atlantic stove. The old-time Scotch collie didn't bark or whine. He simply existed there, solid warm, utterly without judgment. Just whine, Caleb whispered, voice hoarse as gravel. Just the goddamn wind. 25 pounds of dog. That's all that stood between Caleb Harding and the rifle barrel ending he'd considered more times than he'd ever admit. The rough black and white coat brushed his leg as Sergeant settled beside him. Ears half-cocked, always listening, twitched toward the door, then relaxed. No threat. Rest now. But Caleb couldn't rest, never could, not since 1862. He pushed himself up from the narrow floor space beside the stove. The bunk belonged to the dog, now to whoever needed it more than him, and shuffled to the Dutch door. Unlatched the top half, swung it open. Cold air rushed in like a blade carrying sage and frost and the faint, ever-present smell of sheep. 400 of them scattered across the moonlit hillside below, dirty snowdrifts breathing in the darkness. Wyoming territory stretched in every direction, endless grassland rolling toward distant mountains. Not a single tree for miles, no blind corners, no ambush points, no place for an enemy to hide. That's why he'd come here. That's why they all came here. The hollow-eyed veterans who couldn't stop flinching at loud noises, couldn't hold jobs or wives or conversations. The men who screamed in their sleep and wept without warning and saw dead friends in every stranger's face. The doctors back east called it soldier's heart. Some said nostalgia, as if homesickness could explain why Caleb dove under tables when children lit firecrackers, why crowds made him feel phantom rifle muzzles aimed at his spine, why gunpowder smells sent him into convulsions so violent his wife had stopped sleeping in their bed. His ex-wife now. You came back. Martha had said the night she left with the Cleveland merchant, but you're not Caleb anymore. I don't know who you are. Neither did he. The sheep wagon had saved his life, if this could be called living. 11 feet long, 6 feet wide. Canvas stretched over curved wooden ribs like some great beast's skeleton. A rolling coffin, some called it. But here, no sudden noises shattered his fragile calm. No crowds pressed close. No pitying looks or whispered conversations about poor Caleb Harding who came back wrong from the war. Just him, the dog, and 400 sheep who didn't give a damn whether he screamed until dawn. He reached for the worn leather journal on the highest shelf. 7 years of entries. 7 years of barely surviving, recorded in cramped handwriting by lamplight and moonlight and the gray half-light of too many sleepless dawns. He opened to a fresh page, October 14th, 1879. Nightmare again. Brennan's face. Artillery sound. Woke 3 a.m. Sergeant on watch. Wind from north, temperature dropping. Move flock to southern pasture before first snow. Pencil hovering. Then 7 years out here now. Longer than my marriage lasted, longer than my army service. Sometimes I wonder if this is living or just a slower way of dying. Sergeant doesn't seem to mind either way. That has to be enough. He closed the journal, set it beside the other book on that high shelf, the thick dog-eared Sears Roebuck catalog, its yellow cover worn soft from years of handling. The Wish Book, shepherds called it. Pages filled with pictures of another world, houses with multiple rooms, stores crammed with goods, families eating dinner at tables with tablecloths. Dreams, the only safe kind Caleb had anymore. What he didn't know, couldn't possibly know, was that everything would change in 17 days. At Bridger's trading post, between shelves of flour and ammunition, he would find a woman standing alone in a crowd, a Shoshone woman with eyes that held the same hollow darkness as his own, a woman running from ghosts just as terrible as his. She would teach him something he'd forgotten existed, that surviving wasn't the same as living, that broken pieces could fit together in new ways, that two stars falling separately through endless night might somehow find each other and make light. But that was later. For now, there was only the cold, the coffee ritual waiting to begin, and the endless work of staying sane for one more day. "Another sunrise, Sergeant," Caleb said quietly. The dog's tail thumped once against the wooden floor. "Let's see if we can make it to the next one." Bridger's trading post smelled like everything Caleb had spent 7 years escaping tobacco smoke, unwashed bodies, rot gut whiskey, and the particular stench of too many humans crammed into too small a space. He hated coming here. Every 3 months, no choice flour, coffee, salt, ammunition, things the land couldn't provide. Each visit was an exercise in controlled panic, his body screaming run, while his mind forced his legs forward into the noise, the crowds, the chaos. Sergeant pressed against his leg, solid and grounding. "You're here. You're safe. I'm watching." Caleb pushed through the door, keeping his back to the wall. A dozen men crowded the interior miners, mostly cavalry soldiers, drifters. Too many people. Too much noise. Flour, coffee, salt, ammunition. Get in, get out, get back to the silence. Harding. Patterson, the proprietor, greeted him with false warmth. "Haven't seen you since spring. Thought the wolves got you." Still breathing, Caleb placed his list on the counter. 4 pounds of arbuckles. While Patterson gathered supplies, a commotion erupted from the back corner. Male laughter, the ugly kind preceding violence. Not your problem. Get your supplies and leave. But Sergeant had turned toward the sound, a low growl building in his throat. "Little squaw thinks she's too good to talk to us," a slurred voice carried over. "Maybe we need to teach her." Caleb's hand tightened on the counter. "Not your problem." His feet were already moving. 3 miners had backed a woman into the corner near the stove. She was native Shoshone by the beadwork on her worn dress, holding a small knife with the steady hand of someone who knew how to use it. But 3 against 1 were bad odds, and the men were too drunk to care about the blade. What struck Caleb wasn't her fear, there was surprisingly little. What struck him was the exhaustion in her eyes, the look of someone who'd been running so long that death might almost be relief. He recognized that look, saw it every time he accidentally glanced at his own reflection. "Walk away," he said. The biggest miner, red-faced breath like a distillery, squinted at him. "Who the hell are you?" "Nobody." "Walk away. We're just having a conversation with the lady. She doesn't want to converse." The miner stepped toward him, sizing him up. Caleb was tall but thin, worn down by years of hard living. Not impressive, but something in his eyes made the miner hesitate. Caleb had seen men die. Hundreds. He'd killed his share Confederate soldiers whose faces still haunted his nightmares. That experience left marks a certain flatness in the gaze, communicating a simple truth. "I've done this before. I can do it again." The moment stretched. Then the miner spat and stepped back. "Ain't worth the trouble. Let the sheep kisser have his squaw." They pushed past, deliberately bumping his shoulder. Caleb didn't react. Reactions cost energy. When they were gone, he turned to the woman. She still held the knife, watching him with dark eyes, revealing nothing. "You got someplace to go?" No answer. "Winter's coming. You got shelter." Slight shake of her head. Caleb studied her. Mid-20s. Too thin, the kind from months of not eating enough. Dress patched in a dozen places, moccasins nearly worn through. A survivor, but how much longer? Walk away. You don't need complications. But another voice, older, deeper the man he'd been before Antietam, said something different. "You can't save everyone, but you can save her." "I've got a wagon," he said slowly. Sheep operation up in the hills. 3 days ride. Need someone to cook, mend clothes. There's food, shelter. She watched, still silent. It's work, not charity, not anything else. Just work. Her gaze dropped to Sergeant, watching how the dog leaned against his master's leg, how Caleb's hand absently scratched behind those half-cocked ears. A man kind to his dog is rarely cruel to people. I cook good, she said finally, accented but clear. That's fine. I'm not your property. No, you're not. Long pause. Then she slid the knife into her belt. I go. They didn't speak much during the 3-day journey. Caleb wasn't a talker, and the woman she hadn't offered her name seemed equally comfortable with silence. But silence came in different varieties. There was hostile silence, heavy with suspicion, empty silence echoing like a voice in a canyon, and this cautious but not unfriendly quiet. 2 wounded animals circling each other, testing for safety. Sergeant accepted her faster than expected. By the 2nd day, he allowed her nearby without growling. By the 3rd, he let her touch his matted fur. He likes you. Caleb said the most words he'd strung together since leaving Bridger's post. He knows, she replied. Knows what those dark eyes met his. I not hurt you. He knows. That night, camped in a sheltered valley, Caleb woke, gasping at midnight. Antietam again. Always. Antietam the screams. The smoke Brennan's ruined body. The endless thunder of artillery. Sergeant was there instantly, licking his face, grounding him. Caleb clutched the animal like a drowning man, his whole body shaking. When the tremors subsided, he became aware of the woman watching from across the dying fire. She didn't speak, didn't ask questions, didn't look away. War? She asked finally. He nodded, ashamed. My husband, same. Her voice was quiet. Before he died, dreams of battle. Wake up fighting nothing. She didn't offer comfort or platitudes, just acknowledgement. I have seen this before. I understand. It was exactly what he needed. The wagon sat on a hillside overlooking a broad valley, its canvas roof bleached by sun-wooden sides, weathered to the color of old bones. Smoke rose from the black stovepipe jutting through the canvas. Home, Caleb said. The word tasted strange. The woman studied every detail. The Dutch door with separate halves. The overhanging canvas creating a small porch. The rifle rack near the entrance. Small, she thought, but solid and isolated. No one would find her here. Caleb showed her the interior without ceremony. 11 feet of organized space bunk at back, raised high with storage beneath. Queen Atlantic stove bolted to the floor. Bench seats along both walls, lifting to reveal compartments. A pull-out table hidden beneath the bunk. Small mirror on the door, covered with cloth. Why cover, she asked. Don't like looking at myself. She accepted this without comment. He showed her the storage beneath the bunk. Sergeant sleeps here, also where we put orphan lambs in winter. Bum lambs their mothers die or reject them. She knelt and peered inside. It smelled of dog and sheep and old wool. Warm, she observed. Has to be. Lambs die in the cold. He pointed to the bunk. You sleep here, she frowned. Where you sleep? By the stove, near Sergeant. I take floor, you take bed. No. Firm, but not unkind. I don't sleep much anyway. Need to be near the dog. She studied him, reading between the lines. He needed the dog close his alarm system, his anchor, his proof the world was safe enough to close his eyes. Okay, she said finally. He gestured toward the mess, dirty dishes, torn clothes, something unidentifiable crusted in the Dutch oven. Then pointed to the food stores, beans, flour, salt, pork packages of Arbuckle's coffee with yellow wrappers and flying angel logos. Do this work. I'll feed you. She looked at him, at Sergeant curled by the stove with the contentment of a creature knowing exactly where he belonged. At the small, cramped, smoke-stained space that somehow felt safer than anywhere she'd been in 2 years. She walked to the stove and began building a fire. That was her answer. She learned his rituals quickly. The most sacred was morning coffee. Caleb woke before dawn every day, sometimes from nightmares, sometimes from a body that had forgotten true rest. His first act was always the same. Open the Dutch door's top half, let Sergeant out, begin the coffee. She watched from the bunk, the first morning, pretending sleep. He filled the battered blue enamel pot, dented black with years of smoke with water, placed it on the stove, waited for violent rolling boil, then opened a package of Arbuckles and measured grounds by hand. 1 fistful per cup dumped directly into roiling water. She nearly gasped. Her tribe steeped herbs, gently coaxing flavor with patience. This was brutality. But he wasn't done. When the mixture had boiled several minutes, filling the wagon with bitter aroma, he removed the pot, opened the lid, and she suppressed disbelief, picked up a glowing coal with fire tongs and dropped it into the coffee. It hissed, steam rose, ground swirled, then slowly sank. "What you do?" she asked, forgetting to pretend sleep. "Settles the grounds. Old trick. You put fire in drink. Coal adds flavor." Her face transcended language barriers. "You are insane." He almost smiled. Almost. He poured slowly into a tin cup, leaving sludge at the bottom. The liquid was black as pitch, thick enough to cast shadows. He sat on the wagon step sergeant, pressing against his legs, drinking while the sun rose. Slow sips, eyes on the horizon, the first moment of peace in a day offering few others. She tried the coffee on day 2, nearly choked. Bitter. That's coffee. This not drink, this punishment. But she noticed his shoulders relax as he drank, his perpetual tension easing slightly with each sip. This ritual mattered, an anchor in days that might otherwise blur into shapeless survival. After that, she made his coffee every morning, exactly as he did, water boiling violently, grounds by the fistful coal dropped in to settle. She never drank it, brewed herb tea instead, but made his with care. He never thanked her in words. But she noticed he started leaving the peppermint sticks from Arbuckle's packages on the shelf instead of giving them all to Sargent. She understood they were for her if she wanted them. She transformed his food within a week. For 7 years, Caleb had survived on beans, salt pork, sourdough biscuits. Same meals, same preparation, eaten from duty rather than pleasure. Food was fuel, something to shovel in so he could keep moving, keep not dying. Morning light changed everything. It started small. She disappeared one morning, returning with arms full of plants he'd walked past 1,000 times without seeing. "Camas," she said, showing him a root bulb. "Good. Sweet when cooked long time." That night, instead of beans, she served porridge from the camas root, topped with wild huckleberries from a creek bed he never knew existed. The sweetness was subtle, natural, nothing like civilization's cloying sugar. He ate the entire bowl, scraped it clean. "Good?" she asked. "Good." She taught him to see the land differently. This plant cured headaches. That one settled stomachs. These berries were safe. Those would kill you. "How you know all this?" he asked one evening, watching her sort gathered plants. "My mother." Her mother. All mothers back to beginning. Her hands moved with practiced certainty. "Land provides. You just need eyes to see." 7 years on this prairie, and he'd known nothing beyond the grass his sheep ate. She'd been here weeks and found a dozen foods he'd never tasted. "I'll teach you," she offered. "I'm a slow learner." "You taught Sargent's language." She nodded toward the dog. "You learn anything if it matters." She was right. He began paying attention, noting which plants she gathered, watching how she read the land. Humbling being taught by someone half his age. But out here, society's opinions meant nothing. What mattered was survival, and she was very, very good at surviving. That night, instead of the eternal beans, she served him a porridge made from the camas root, slow-cooked, until it broke down into something smooth and earthy. On top, she'd scattered wild huckleberries she'd gathered from a creek bed he never knew existed, purple-black jewels that burst with tartness against the subtle sweetness of the root. Caleb took his first bite, expecting nothing. After 7 years of monotony, his taste buds had gone numb. His expectations for food reduced to simply edible or not edible. The flavor hit him like a memory. Sweetness, but not the cloying sugar of civilization. This was something older, cleaner, the taste of land that had never been plowed or fenced or poisoned. The berries added brightness, cutting through the earthiness of the camas. It was simple food, but it was alive in a way his beans and salt pork had never been. He ate the entire bowl and scraped it clean with his finger. "Good?" she asked, watching him with that careful measuring gaze. "Good." The word was inadequate, but it was all he had. She seemed to understand anyway. Over the following days, she taught him to see the land differently. They would walk together in the early mornings before the sheep needed moving, and she would stop every few feet to point at something he'd overlooked for 7 years. "This plant," she said, crouching beside a low-growing herb with silvery leaves. "Chew leaves for headache. Also good for fever." Caleb knelt beside her, studying the plant. He'd seen it everywhere, growing between rocks, along creek beds, in the shadow of sagebrush. Never once had he considered it might be useful. And this one. She moved to another plant, this one with small yellow flowers. Roots settle upset stomach. Dry them, make tea. Tea, like your coffee, but medicine. He filed the information away, though he doubted he'd remember half of it. His mind was built for different things: the weight of a rifle, the sound of cannon fire, the screams of dying men. Plant identification hadn't been part of his education, but Morning Light was patient. She repeated things without frustration, showed him the same plants multiple times until recognition began to stick. She drew pictures in the dirt with a stick sketching leaf shapes and root structures. "These berries," she said one afternoon, pointing to a bush heavy with red fruit. "Safe, good raw, better cooked." "And those," he indicated a similar-looking bush nearby. "Kill you." They looked the same. "Look closer." He did. The deadly bush had leaves with slightly pointed tips. The safe one's leaves were rounded. Such a small difference. Such fatal consequences for missing it. "How do you know all this?" he asked that evening, watching her sort through a basket of gathered plants. Her hands moved with the certainty of long practice, separating edible from medicinal, from useless. She didn't need to think about it. The knowledge lived in her fingers, in her muscle memory. "My mother taught me. Her mother taught her." She held up a root, examined it, placed it in the medicine pile. All mothers back to the beginning of our people. Land provides everything: food, medicine, shelter, clothing. You just need eyes to see. Caleb looked out the wagon's Dutch door at the endless prairie. He'd spent 7 years on this land and known nothing beyond the grass his sheep ate. She'd been here barely 2 weeks and had already found a dozen foods. He'd never tasted medicines he'd never known existed, resources he'd walked past every single day. "I was blind," he said quietly. "Not blind, just never taught." She continued sorting without looking up. White man looks at land and sees something to own, to change, to make into something else. A pause. "My people look at land and see something to listen to learn from. Will you teach me?" Now she did look up. "You want to learn? I'm a slow learner." The corner of her mouth twitched, not quite a smile, but close. "You taught Sergeant dozens of commands, whistles, hand signals, whole language between you." She nodded toward the dog, who lay in his usual spot, watching them both. "You learn anything if it matters enough." She was right. He had spent months perfecting his communication with Sargent, developing a vocabulary of sounds and gestures that let them work together across distances of half a mile or more. If he could learn, that he could learn this. "It matters," he said. The meals continued to evolve. Morning Light showed him how to make pemmican dried sheep meat, pounded fine, mixed with rendered fat, and dried berries packed into leather pouches. It would keep for months, maybe years, and tasted infinitely better than the jerky he'd been choking down. She taught him to cook the bum lambs, orphan sheep they kept in the space under the bunk, in a way that made the meat tender instead of tough. She showed him which wild onions could be added to the eternal bean pot to transform it from punishment into pleasure. One evening, she produced something that made him stop breathing. "What is that?" "Spotted pup." She held out a bowl of rice where had she found rice cooked with dried fruit and sweetened with something that definitely wasn't sugar. The raisins dotted the surface like spots on a dog's coat. "My mother used to make this," he whispered. Morning Light set the bowl in front of him. "You talked about it. One night when the bad dreams came, you said her name Sarah, and you said Spotted Pup, and you sounded like a little boy." He didn't remember saying any of that, but the nightmares often left him talking, crying, sometimes screaming. He'd learned to stop being embarrassed about it years ago. "How did you?" "I listened, then I made." She shrugged as if this were nothing, as if recreating a childhood memory from mumbled nightmare talk were the most ordinary thing in the world. Caleb ate the spotted pup, slowly letting each bite dissolve on his tongue. It wasn't exactly like his mother's version. The sweetness came from wild honey instead of molasses. The fruit was service berries rather than raisins, but the essence was the same. Comfort, safety, home. When he finished, his eyes were wet. He didn't try to hide it. "Thank you," he said. She nodded once and began cleaning up. No fuss, no expectations. Just a gift given freely, received gratefully. That night, after she'd fallen asleep, Caleb reached for his journal and wrote by the dim glow of the stove. December 6, 1979. "She made me spotted pup today. I don't know how she knew. I don't know how she found the ingredients, but she knew, and she found them, and she made it. For 7 years, I've been eating to survive. Tonight, I remembered what it was like to eat, because food could be good, because someone cared enough to make it good. I keep waiting for her to ask for something in return. Payment for all she's given me. The food, the teaching, the nights she sits up when the dreams come bad. But she never asks. She just gives. I don't know what to do with that. I've forgotten how to receive kindness without calculating its cost. He paused, pencil hovering over the page. Then he added, maybe that's what she's teaching me. Not just which plants to eat, but how to accept gifts, how to let someone in. It's harder than learning the plants. He closed the journal and returned it to its shelf next to the worn Sears Roebuck catalog. The Wish Book had kept him company through 7 years of solitude, its pages filled with dreams of a different life. He hadn't opened it once since morning light arrived. The dreams he wanted now couldn't be found in any catalog. Outside, the wind picked up whistling through the canvas top of the sheep wagon. Sargent shifted in his sleep pause, twitching as he chased phantom sheep through dreamland. Morning Light's breathing was slow, and even the rhythm of someone who had learned to sleep lightly in a dangerous world. Caleb lay awake listening to all of it. The wind, the dog, the woman, the distant bleating of sheep settling for the night. For 7 years, these sounds had been the soundtrack of his loneliness. The noise that filled the silence left by everything he'd lost. Tonight, they sounded different. Tonight, they sounded like home. The blizzard came in November earlier and harder than expected. She saw it first 3 days before it hit. She'd gone still while hanging laundry on the wagon, her eyes fixed on the southern sky. Storm, she said. Caleb squinted at the horizon. Blue sky, scattered clouds, nothing alarming. Where? She pointed at a flock of birds wheeling in the distance. Flying low, wrong direction, big storm, maybe 2 days. He was skeptical, the sky looked fine, but he'd learned to trust her instincts. They spent 2 days preparing moving the wagon to a sheltered valley, herding the sheep into a tight group against a rock face, stockpiling firewood inside the canvas walls. The storm hit at midnight. Wind screamed across the prairie like a living thing clawing at the canvas, rocking the wagon on its wheels. Snow drove horizontal so thick you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. The temperature plummeted until the water in their bucket grew a skin of ice despite the roaring stove. Caleb had lived through Wyoming winters before, but this was different. This was the land trying to kill them. They huddled together in the cramped wagon, not touching but close enough to share heat. Sargent pressed against Caleb's legs, shivering despite his thick coat. The stove glowed red hot, barely keeping pace with the cold seeping through every gap and seam. At 3 a.m, Caleb noticed her staring at the corner where she kept the sourdough starter. What? Starter dying. Too cold. He understood immediately. The sourdough starter was life itself without it. No bread, no biscuits, nothing to vary their diet through the long months ahead. If the yeast died, they couldn't replace it until spring at the earliest. She stood across the swaying wagon and retrieved the ceramic crock. Before he could ask what she intended, she climbed into the bunk, pulled the blankets around her, and cradled the crock against her body. Body warm, she explained. Warmer than stove. He watched her curl around the precious starter like a mother protecting a child. Such a small thing, a crock of fermented flour and water. Such an enormous thing out here where small differences meant life or death. Thank you, he said. She didn't answer. Already asleep, her body heat, saving what the stove could not. Spring came slowly, grudgingly, as if the land resented giving up its grip on winter. The sheep had survived most of them. 30 had died in the blizzard, including several ewes heavy with lamb. Caleb had found their frozen bodies scattered across the hillside when the snow finally melted and something in him had broken at the sight. Not grief exactly. He'd seen too much death to grieve for sheep, but exhaustion bone deep and soul wide. The endless effort of keeping things alive in a world that wanted them dead. Sargent sensed his despair. The old dog, 8 years now ancient for a working collie, had stayed closer than usual, pressing against him whenever he sat still. Watching with those intelligent amber eyes that seemed to understand everything. Getting old, aren't you? Caleb murmured one evening, running his fingers through the dog's matted fur. Both of us. Sargent's tail thumped weakly against the wagon floor. She watched from across the small space, her hands busy mending a torn shirt. She noticed what Caleb tried to hide. Sergeant moved slower these days, sometimes struggling to rise in the mornings, his once sharp bark grown hoarse with age. "He good dog," she said quietly. "The best." "How long you have him?" 7 years. Got him right after I came west." He paused. "Named him after a friend, a man who died at Antietam." She didn't ask for details. She'd learned that he would share when ready, and pushing only drove him deeper into silence. But that night, after the lamp was out and the stove had settled to a steady glow, he spoke into the darkness. "Thomas Brennan. Sergeant Thomas Brennan. We enlisted together from the same town in Ohio. I was an officer who was enlisted but out there in the mud, and the blood rank didn't mean much. He was the only one who could make me laugh. Even when things were worst, he'd find something funny to say." She listened motionless in the bunk above. "Artillery shell took him apart at Antietam, right in front of me. I held him while he died, and there was nothing," his voice cracked, "nothing I could do. Just watch him go." Sergeant the dog whimpered softly and pressed closer against his master. "When I got this dog, he looked at me with those eyes, and I swear to God it was like Brennan was looking at me, telling me it was okay, that I should keep going." Long silence. "The dog is your friend's spirit," she said finally, "staying to watch over you. You believe that?" "My people believe all spirits find new homes. Maybe your friend found this one." Caleb didn't answer, but his hand found Sergeant's fur in the darkness and held on like a man afraid of drowning. The wolves came on a moonless night in late spring. Sergeant's bark ripped Caleb from sleep. Not the warning bark he used for strangers, but the frantic, furious sound of imminent threat. Caleb grabbed the Winchester before his feet hit the floor instinct, overriding the fog of interrupted dreams. She was already awake, pulling on her moccasins, grabbing the torch they kept ready by the door. Outside chaos. The sheep bleated in terror, scattering across the hillside. Dark shapes moved among them wolves, at least 5, maybe more emboldened by hunger after a hard winter. And in the center of it all, Sergeant. The old dog had thrown himself into the pack. Not to kill a 25-pound collie was no match for wolves twice his size, but to delay, to buy time, to fulfill the purpose for which his kind had been bred for generations. Hold the line until the man with the rifle arrives. Caleb fired. One wolf dropped. Fired again, another yelped and fled. But they kept coming, driven by starvation, past the point of caution. She ran forward with the torch screaming words in Shoshone, an old war cry remembered from stories of battles she'd been too young to witness, and the flames drove back 2 more wolves. But one remained. The pack leader, larger than the others, had locked onto Sergeant. Caleb couldn't shoot. They were too close, moving too fast, and in the darkness, he couldn't risk hitting the dog. He charged forward, swinging the rifle like a club, but he was too slow, too far away. The wolf's jaws closed on Sergeant's side. The dog didn't scream. He fought in silence, as he'd always done, everything twisting to bite back, even as the wolf shook him like a rag. Blood sprayed black in the starlight. She reached them first, driving the torch into the wolf's face. It released Sergeant with a snarl and turned on her, then stopped as Caleb's rifle cracked one final time. The wolf fell. Silence rushed in to fill the void. Caleb dropped to his knees beside Sergeant. The dog lay still, his breathing rapid and shallow, dark blood soaking the grass beneath him. Those intelligent amber eyes found Caleb's face and held. "No," Caleb whispered. "No, no, no." She knelt beside him, her hands moving over the dog's body with practiced efficiency. Then she stopped, looked up, shook her head. "Ribs broken, bleeding inside. I so sorry. Do something. You know plants medicine. Nothing fixed this." Caleb gathered Sergeant into his arms, not caring about the blood soaking his shirt. The dog was lighter than he remembered, wasted by age and hard work, and now this final sacrifice. 7 years. Caleb said, his voice breaking. 7 years you kept me alive. You were the only reason I didn't. He couldn't finish. Didn't need to. Sergeant's tail moved weakly. Once. Twice. His tongue found Caleb's hand and licked it, the same gesture of comfort he'd offered through hundreds of nightmares, thousands of dark hours when his master had wanted to give up. "I'm here. I was always here. It's okay now." Then the light went out of those amber eyes and Sergeant was gone. She found him at dawn, still sitting beside the grave he'd dug on the hillside overlooking the valley. The fresh earth was mounded with stones to keep predators away, and he'd placed a rough wooden cross at the head, unnecessary perhaps for a dog. But Sergeant had been more than a dog. She sat down beside him, not touching, but close enough that he could feel her presence. "My people believe," she said quietly, "that when a dog dies for its master, its spirit waits in the next world, guarding the path so the master will not have to walk alone when his time comes." Caleb didn't respond. His eyes were red, his face haggard. "He waiting for you now, not sad, proud. He did his duty." Still nothing. She tried again. "You want, I leave you alone." "No." The word came out hoarse, barely audible. "Stay." So she stayed. They sat together as the sun rose higher, watched the sheep grazing peacefully on the hillside alive because of Sergeant's sacrifice, and let the silence hold them. Finally, Caleb spoke. "I can't sleep without him. He guarded my dreams. Without him, I'll never." "Then I guard." He turned to look at her. "I have ears. I have eyes. I sit at door like Sergeant." She met his gaze steadily. "You sleep. I watch. You're not a dog. No, I am person. Person better than dog at some things." A hint of something almost like warmth entered her voice. Not better at sheep, but better at watching. That night, she sat by the door of the sheep wagon wrapped in blankets against the cold. Caleb lay in his usual spot by the stove, exhausted beyond words, expecting the old familiar insomnia to keep him staring at the ceiling until dawn. But somewhere in the darkness, her voice came soft and low, a song in Shoshone, a lullaby perhaps, or a prayer. He didn't understand the words, but the melody wound through him like smoke, like water, like something ancient and good. He slept. Not peacefully, the nightmares still came, but he slept. And when he woke, gasping at 3 a.m., she was there, not touching him, just present. "Here," she said softly. "You hear, not war. Here." He breathed, nodded, closed his eyes again, slept. 3 days after Sergeant's death, she told him her name. They were sitting outside the wagon in the late afternoon sun, sharing a meal of the calmest porridge she'd taught him to make. The sheep dotted the hillside below, quiet for once, and the world felt suspended in amber light. "Morning light," she said suddenly. He looked up from his bowl. "What?" "My name." "Morning light. In Shoshone." She traced something in the dirt with her finger symbols he couldn't read. "My mother give me because I born when sun coming up." It was the first personal information she'd offered without being asked. "Morning light," he repeated carefully. The syllables felt strange on his tongue, but right somehow. "Your name," she said. "Caleb." "What it mean?" "It's Hebrew. Means faithful or loyal. My mother was religious." She considered this. "Faithful, like Sergeant." The mention of the dog still hurt, a raw wound that would be long in healing, but he nodded. "I guess so." "Good name. You faithful to sheep, faithful to dog, faithful to this." She gestured at the wagon, the land, the life he'd built in exile. "Faithful to you too," he thought, but didn't say. "More than I expected, more than I understand." She stood brushing dirt from her dress. "I go check water barrel, getting low." He watched her walk away, moving across his land like she belonged there. Because he realized she did belong there. In just 6 months, she'd woven herself into the fabric of his existence so thoroughly that he couldn't imagine the sheep wagon without her presence. That night, he wrote in his journal, June 3rd, 1880, "Her name is Morning Light. It suits her. She brings light to this place, not harsh daylight that shows every flaw, but the soft glow of dawn that makes everything look possible." Sergeant would have approved. I think he did those last months. He let her close when he never let anyone else close. "I don't know what we are. Partners," she would say, "but it feels like more. It feels like family, though neither of us has used that word. Maybe some things are better left unnamed." Summer passed into fall, fall into winter, and they survived it together. The routines became ritual, her morning coffee for him bitter and black, his evening reading to her from old newspapers, helping her English improve, their shared meals drawing from both cultures, beans alongside Kama's root biscuits beside pemmican. Without Sergeant, the work was harder, but Morning Light learned the whistles and signals, her quick mind mastering what the dog had known by instinct. And slowly, the sheep wagon transformed from coffin into home. One spring morning, a year after Sergeant's death, Caleb woke to find her drawing with charcoal on paper materials from Bridger's Post. She held up the image, the wagon on its hillside, smoke rising, 2 figures in the doorway. Between them, at their feet, a dog. "Sergeant," he said softly. "He's still here, in spirit. This our home now, his too." Always. She reached across and touched his hand, the first deliberate contact between them. 2 stars.